All right, welcome to Learning Plan 1 of Motivational Interviewing. My name is Sean Yeager, and I'm going to be the instructor for this course, and I want to welcome you to the first learning plan. I'm very excited to teach this course. This is the first semester that NTC is offering it, and I actually got to write it. So if you have any suggestions for improvement, please send those to me. Tried to make it interactive as much as possible. So we'll go ahead and dive in here. What I'm going to do is cover the first couple of chapters here in your text. And what I want to cover first is what MI is, motivational interviewing. So MI has a history of probably over 20 years. It was started by Dr. Bill Miller and Stephen Rolnick. And they have been working on fine-tuning MI over the past probably 25, 30 years. And it really comes from, if you're familiar with Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy, it's really focused on the therapist or the counselor or the helper sitting in the passenger side and allowing the client to drive the car, so to speak, in the change process. MI is geared for and focused on people that are experiencing something called ambivalence towards change. And what ambivalence is the best way to describe it is sitting on the fence, trying to decide whether to change or whether not to change. You have pros and cons for both sides, and so this affects probably just about everyone. I know that I go through ambivalence with simple changes that are not necessarily life altering. But there are people who, specifically in, say, addiction medicine, using the addiction disease model, that which is where MI developed from, um, have difficulty moving from the addiction to recovery. And so it's worth taking a look at what are some of the roadblocks, what are some of the challenges that these people have with addiction and trying to get better. A lot of them want to get better, they just don't know how to do it, or if they don't have the confidence to do it. So MI is structured in a way to give people the space, the security, to explore those changes. And so, as practitioners of MI, it's important for us to remain neutral and non-judgmental and kind of help the person find their own way, so to speak. So, why is learning MI important to you? Well, MI specifically in the field of corrections or addiction medicine has been growing in popularity over probably the past 10 years or so, and it continues to increase in popularity. And I would say that that's probably true in medicine as well. There's lots of providers that are being trained in MI to use with their patients. And a perfect example of that is if you have a diabetic patient who is on the fence about changing diet or exercise, we know how difficult it is to make changes to our diets or to increase exercise or movement. And so MI can be useful in those instances. And so when you're going out to seek employment, I've come across, and even when I hire people for my positions that I get to hire for, MI is crucial in working with clients. Our contracts, because I work for a nonprofit agency with Department of Corrections and Marathon County, and so it's very important that we hire people who have at least a knowledge base of what MI is, because they're going to be using that with clients. And I know the Department of Corrections is heavily, heavily focused on using MI with offenders. So it's becoming more and more popular because there is more and more research that supports that it works. And so that's why you're taking this course, and hopefully this will be beneficial to you when you go and start seeking employment, um, or if you when you move on to a 4-year degree. MI is going to be a huge help, and it's going to, I think, give you an advantage over others who don't have the experience or the education in MI. And so what we're going to be covering in the first couple chapters here are the basics. We're going to discuss what MI is. So there are a couple different styles of conversation. You have directing, guiding, following styles. MI is more or less a guiding type of style of conversation. We don't want to direct people, and we don't want to, and we do follow people as well. But it's really our jobs to kind of help the client find their own path and explore different options with them. And you can read more about that in the book. One of the things that we have to be conscious of at all times when we're working with clients is different reflexes that we have. And one of the most prevalent ones, especially in newer helpers working in MI, is called the writing reflex. And the writing reflex is it's very simple, really. It's really what our values and beliefs determine what's right and wrong. And so other people will have different values and beliefs than we do. And so by us kind of telling people what they should do with their lives or how they should change, we're kind of forcing our values and belief systems on that person instead of allowing them to explore their own values and beliefs and come up with a plan that's going to work for them. So it's very important that we keep that under wraps as we're working with people. We want to be non-judgmental and remain neutral. So, on the topic of ambivalence, we'll get into ambivalence more in the following chapters. I just wanted to touch on it a little bit. You've got a basic understanding of it, so I think we'll leave it there for now. I talked about origins of MI. Typically, the way you learn MI is through some lecture, but a lot of it is practice. And so, over the course of this term, you're going to be submitting a couple of video presentations of you actually performing MI with someone. And we'll get into that as we move forward, so don't panic. It's not a big deal, but it's an important part of the course, and it's an important part of learning MI as well. All right. So we're going to discuss the first, I guess, component of MI. And these aren't in any particular order of importance, but it's important to spend time on each of these. So we're going to cover the spirit of MI. When you talk about the spirit, it's kind of an abstract concept, but really what it is your attitude about working with people. You could teach people a lot of different skills, but there are some things, some principles that you really cannot teach. It's something that someone either has in them or they don't because it's very intrinsic. And so if you respect people, you care about people, and you really want to help people, then the spirit of MI or the attitude of MI is already going to be within you. The reason why it's important is because without the spirit, without the attitude of MI, the technique itself is kind of dead. So we use the spirit of MI because it kind of brings to life the other components. And so the four components of MI, we have absolute worth, autonomy, accurate empathy, and affirmation. I won't spend a whole lot of time on these, but I do want to touch on some of them here. Absolute worth, we have to believe that the person we're working with has worth. They have a purpose here, and they have goals. Autonomy, we want people to be able to feel free to explore their beliefs, their values, their attitudes, their behaviors without fear of judgment. And so giving them autonomy, giving them that freedom will help them explore those different areas and hopefully help them come up with a plan that they feel comfortable with. Accurate empathy. It's interesting that they use accurate empathy here. You could just use empathy, but the authors wanted to be specific because just empathizing with someone can be very general and can really come across as rather dry or insincere. And so it's important that when we empathize with someone that we kind of tailor it to a specific situation, and that's going to convey a lot deeper. It's going to have a lot deeper effect with clients that you're working with. There's some examples in your book of what that looks like, and so we'll explore that too as we move forward. But it's important to note that it's not just empathy that we want to demonstrate, but we want to tie it to something specific, a type of behavior um, or attitude or belief, something like that. And then affirmation as well. You can almost tie accurate empathy and use the same word accurate with affirmation, because we don't want to just give a general affirmations to people, because again it comes across as insincere. We want to tie an affirmation to a very specific behavior. And so those four components combined together create what's called the spirit of MI. And the book breaks down absolute worth, and some of these others are discussed in more detail. So I highly, highly recommend you study the material for these chapters, especially the spirit of MI, because it's very important. And as we move forward in the course, part of the videos recordings that you're going to be doing, you're going to be graded on how you demonstrate spirit, or you're going to have to communicate, articulate how you demonstrated spirit of MI in your recordings. So it's a good idea to review that section. All right, the method of MI. I'm going to spend a few minutes here on this. Now, there are the other component of MI is the four processes. So we have the spirit, which is made up of four principles. And then you have the four processes, right? So um, we have engaging, we have focusing, we have evoking, and planning. And it's very important to note that these four processes are very fluid. So we start with engaging. We're engaging with the clients. We're getting to know them. We're building rapport, helping them open up a little bit. And then you're going to move into focusing. You're going to help the client focus on a specific area that they want to work on, not that you want to work on with them, but what's important to them. And then from there, once you have that narrowed down, you're going to start working on evoking information. You're going to get as much information as you can, and you're going to do that by asking questions, making reflection statements, giving affirmations and summaries. And we'll talk more about that later. But it's just important to know that evoking is just getting as much information about the situation as possible. And then finally, you're going to move to the planning stage, where you're going to be working with the client on brainstorming, coming up with some tangible goals that they can leave the session with, feeling like they're confident in completing those goals. And so it's also important to note that the four processes processes are very fluid. You may meet with a client and you engage with them, you build that rapport, and then you start moving into the focusing part. And then the session might be over and they come back and something has happened and they've kind of lost that trust with people in general. And so you may have to work again and go back to engaging with the client. It's probably important to do that anyway at the beginning of each session and kind of summarize what you discussed last time. But re-engaging with that client, moving into the focusing, and the focusing part may have changed too. You may have to go back and start working from scratch on focusing, and then moving on to evoking. And so you may get all the way to planning, and then the client's new information comes to light, or the client's motivation changes, and you may go all the way back to focusing again. So it's a very fluid process. It's not something that is directed by the helper, but it is directed by the clients. And it's our job as helpers to help them kind of steer the car, so to speak, in the direction that they want to go in. All right, and then I'm going to briefly talk about ORs. ORs is just it's another component of MI. So you have the spirit, the four processes, and ORs. ORs is open questions or just questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. And so we'll discuss more about that in another chapter. Make sure that you're covering all the chapters, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and contact me. Thanks.